Hi, everyone. Welcome to Run, Walk, Talk, Tales of Inclusion and Development. My name is Steph, and my pronouns are she and her, and we're here with Judy, and her pronouns are she and her. Today, we have a special guest. As you can see, we are joined by Kirsten Anderson to talk about the importance of play in the workplace. Welcome, Kirsten. So glad to have you here.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, we're so happy to have you here. And we thought we would start with a little bit about you. So Kirsten sold her award-winning toy store after 2 decades, and she spent 12 years on global TV as their play expert. And since then, she has been speaking internationally on the bottom line benefits of playful leadership. As the founder of Integrate Play Solutions, Kirsten is a consultant, coach, and fun facilitator of experiential workshops, executive retreats, and keynotes on innovation, performance, change, leadership skills, and even sales. Boring has been banned, especially when there's Lego serious play and applied improv. I hope we hear about that. I hope we hear about that today.
Great.
Like all your guests, I'm just acting out the whole bio in the background.
Thank you. Thank you. We love the notion of playful leadership. So, Kirsten, tell us about you. How did you come to be someone who helps leaders and teams play with potential and performance?
Yeah, most people don't actually associate performance and potential with playfulness, but it is certainly the future of work. And it's something I've been very passionate about and came to very naturally, given that history that you heard, coming up through the toy industry. But what happened, that impetus that made me do a total reinvention late in my career, was that I could see the compression of it, which was an industry term for kids playing less. So kids playing younger and younger and younger. And people would say, oh, it's just due to screens, but it was due to lots of things. And another element besides screens is overstructuredness. Like, I've got ballet, I've got hockey, I've got music, I've got tutoring. And so I was seeing so much unstructured play not lacking, and it was really a play crisis, and it was breaking my heart. And I was like, how do we solve this? How do we get kids playing more? And I thought, we got to get older kids playing more. Well, how do we get older kids playing more? Well, we probably need adults to be modeling this. And then when I started diving into that, the whole research and the studies and the people that really, it's only been in the Plato might have talked about play a long time ago, but actual studies is fairly recent, last 50 to 75 years. And so it's a burgeoning area, but it's really where, if people are doing it at work, even then it's going to trickle into their weekends and their evenings. And so when I started discovering how it could impact every aspect of business, whether people are in finance or marketing or operations or executive C-suite, it just impacts everything. I was like, wow, I think this is, here I was giving out prescriptions for playing the toy store, and I'm like, this is the prescription that everybody needs to elevate their potential and their performance.
Well, and that really leads nicely into, tell us more about how you define play at work. And, what does a workplace that has a joyful culture look like? What distinguishes it?
Yeah, I think you can really feel it more than define it. And if you think about the word love, like, there's so many different types of love, and there's so many different types of play. And so I lean more towards playfulness in my conversations, especially with leaders, a playful approach, a playful mindset. How are we approaching problems? Are we being open? Are we, reevaluating? And this element, as far as DEI, are we breaking down the status quo and the assumptions and the beliefs and the rules that that have been imposed on us, and opening ourselves up to new ways of being, or new ways of thinking, or new ways of doing things. And so that is the really exciting part to me, to see people become more open and more curious. And those are part of the attributes of being playful at work. It can be about taking ourselves less seriously, It can be about levity and, serious topics being more psychologically safe because we've built up this trust and support for each other through a playful approach.
I really like how you've talked about almost like a play mindset instead of just play, so that adults can sort of, because I think when adults first hear the word play, it's
That's for kids.
That's for kids.
That's for kids. Work is serious.
Like,
Yeah.
Can you expand a bit more and sort of share why you actually believe that play is that sort of crucial element in the workplace?
Yeah, and so there is that element of like play itself. I'm not diminishing play itself, like the value of play itself in the workspace, especially breaks. Like there was research during the pandemic where they put EEG machines on where they measured brain activity, and they had people doing meetings all day long, back-to-back meetings. I'm sure you've experienced that. And maybe even just today. And they just got more and more stressed as the day went by. This was at Microsoft that they did this. It's a very small study. And then they did it where they asked them to take just 5-minute breaks. And during that 5 minutes, they were not allowed to do anything work related. So they couldn't go on their phone. They couldn't check their email. They ideally would get up from their desk and maybe play with the dog or, dance or do something that was fun and maybe physical or certainly playful. And of course, it went from red to blue. And so like this dramatic difference in the brain. So there is a lot of well-being and resilience, and, it can help with that boredom and burnout and bore out, which is actually a psychological term. So I don't want to diminish actual play, but there's a lot of play washing that happens where companies say, "Oh, look how playful we are. We've got a pool table or we've got a ping pong table." Yeah. And then the culture is really not that you have permission to play or people aren't modeling playing. It's just like for appearances only.
And sorry, did you say bore out? Did you?
Yeah.
What is that?
And Steph, I think you might be familiar with Adam Grant's book around hidden potential, and he actually talks about deliberate play in that latest book and the power of deliberate play, how it in so many different examples in increasing sales by 43% because they added in playfulness to their learning and development. Same lessons, one with play, one without play, and one team had this 43% increase. And I'm like, yes, I love these numbers that prove this, but just getting bored. Like, imagine us adding, so instead of burnout, bore out. I had never heard that psychological term before, but I'm like, that is so true because we're adding in variety and novelty by adding in playfulness and fun to the workplace.
Well, when you are thinking about, the workplace, and I mentioned earlier in your bio, Lego.
Yeah.
Is that a strategy and activity that you recommend to companies? Like if a company is looking to integrate play into their corporate culture, what tip would you give to leaders? What's something that people could easily do to bring in that play with their teams?
Well, I could take 2 days answering that question
I bet.
at minimum. But if I had to give the 140 character answer to that for 3, it's funny because I just got a message from someone that had seen me speak like a year ago. And she said, "Oh, you recommended bubbles in the car for when I'm commuting and when it's stressful, like just to have bubbles and like blow them out the window so I de-stress." She says, "I've told so many people about that." Now, that may or may not work for you at work to have bubbles to blow when you're stressed out. Maybe it will in your workplace. But starting your meetings with a playful ritual. And one thing I'd really like to emphasize is that this is not about forced fun. And it is, when we play, we invite people to play, we model playfulness. It's about creating a space that gives that permission to play. And part of that is about making mistakes together so we can be more creative and innovative. So starting a meeting with connection before content, not jumping straight into an agenda, and having that moment so you can see what people's energy is at, what they're bringing into the room is so important for that sense of belonging. And so there's so many, I could give 100 examples of ways you could do those rituals, but that is a concrete, practical thing that you can do tomorrow. You can do rituals that are about recognition and gratitude. And, that also can be an opportunity to create some levity and humor in those spaces as well.
Well, I love that you tied it into that psychological safety, and just making people feel that ultimately it's okay to make a mistake, and we can have a laugh about it. And yeah, that I like that. I like that. Steph, I think you were gonna
Yeah, no,
say something.
yeah. But the one thing that I'm sort of also thinking about, and I'm sure you've come across this too, is that resistance, right? And how do you invite them in, but still there is sort of the resistance in leadership that might be sort of valuing kind of play. And so if I was a leader listening, I don't really think about this. I don't know, what is this play thing? Why? What would you say to me? What
Yeah.
would you do?
Well, most people don't want to be convinced of things, you know? So, I present, findings, I present,
Yeah.
evidence, and I ask people to think about their own experiences of joy. I
Mm.
ask them to think back to childhood and how
Mm.
they related to
Mm-hmm.
experimenting and exploring, and like when you were crossing the monkey bars, and did you just stop after one time, or did you keep going back and trying the monkey bars as a kid? And what type of employees do you want to have? Do you want to have people that once they make one mistake they just shut down and they don't keep trying?
Yeah.
So it comes down to ROI, and
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of data around motivation, and that
Mm-hmm.
playfulness being a top motivator, like more motivating than it's totally intrinsic. Like when we're in
Mm-hmm.
flow, when we
Mm-hmm.
are playing to our strengths and we're losing track of time, I mean, that's really a definition of play right there, is being in flow. And that's where you want your employees, in that peak area.
Yeah. I love
And
that.
I also like that you said, I think for me, if I'm thinking about an action item for myself, is that it's got to be something that's natural. You're
Mm.
not saying that everybody goes out and buys bubbles or puts
Right.
stuffed animals all over
Yep.
their desk, or,
Yeah.
does puppet
Yeah.
shows at the office. We're,
Right.
we're, we're figuring out what works for us and our team. And that's that invitation to play. And not everybody's going to be enthusiastic necessarily about it at first, but there's things that we can do, small steps we can take to incorporate that playfulness
Mhm.
at the office. Um,
Yeah. It is unique to everyone has their
yeah,
own play personality, and we don't want to force people into bowling and rock climbing if that's not their thing, right?
yeah.
But if that is your thing, great. If puppets at
Right.
work, you want to have puppets at
I
work,
wasn't,
all the more power to
Yeah.
you, Judy. I want to see that show.
Yeah. Lots
It
of
came
puppets
quite quickly.
showing
I don't
up.
know what that
We
means.
know what you would like
That's
to
right.
see at
That's
the
right.
workplace. Yeah. I One last question that I would like to ask is around, is there, because I love books so much, is there any sort of playbook that you would recommend that we should be reading? Because we always talk about action items in our podcast, and I think it's time to be reading a playbook or something about play.
Yeah. I wish I could say my book, Steph. No, no, I can't.
Yeah.
Because I haven't written that book. My 1,000,001 Post-it notes that are behind me are my book in the making. One of the more kind of scientifically based ones would be this Prime to Perform. So very
Okay.
a little dry, a little
Yeah.
academic. I don't know if I'd
Okay.
recommend it for a book club or anything like that.
Okay.
There's
Okay.
another one called Play, and that one
Okay.
is probably the most famous one, that
Okay.
Dr. Stuart Brown. So both of those have tons of evidence and neuroscience in it around the value of play and play at work, in life and work.
That's great. So that's what I'm going to do. My action item is to get the book Play or Prime to Perform to read. Judy, what is your action item?
Yeah, no, I definitely want to check out that book, but I did notice the Lego behind you when you turned.
Yes,
And
yes,
so
Lego
I'm
Serious
curious,
Play.
well, I'm curious to explore a little bit more about how you might use Lego for play within the workplace. I think it would be something that I can think of uses for it back at my office. So I'd love to connect with you about that. So that's going to
Absolutely.
be my action item.
Oh, that's
I'm looking
great.
forward to that.
That's
Me
great.
too.
You know what? Thank you so much for taking the time today. We'll make sure to put it sort of a few resources. Let's put the book recommendations when we publish the podcast. Thank you so much for coming in to talk about play. Really
Yeah,
appreciate
thank
it.
you.
Well, thank you for being so warm and playful and open.
Thanks. Until next time, take care, everyone.
Bye.